It was a few years ago, actually, in the room where we had dinner last night that we held our first computer science roundtable with Tata. And so that was a walk down memory lane last night. My name is Ted Wells. I'm on the STEM Connector team, here to introduce the next panel. This obviously is a topic. I encourage you, to stay in the room here, but also take a little time in the hallway, because that's where the real conversations are also happening. And I've heard a lot about technology today. And a lot of employers are very concerned. Companies that you wouldn't have thought of as tech companies, like a PepsiCo, is thinking we need tech people. And what does that tech talent look like? So that's going to be the focus of this panel, which is future ready for the digital economy. So future ready talent for the digital economy. So I'd like to invite Balaji Ganapathy from Tata, who's going to moderate this. And then Nate Wells from FedEx. Nate. Lori McFarling from Discovery Education. Becky Schmidt from Walmart. Morag Watson from BP. And John Staines from Cigna. So you've got a lot of companies here that you didn't think of as tech companies who are going to be talking. And this is a role that employers can play in supporting education. So really encourage you to pay attention, and Balaji will take it from here.
Thank you. What an awesome panel. Give them a big round of applause. In preparing for today and talking to the panelists, I was incredibly humbled and also blown away by what they are doing. We can say that digital transformation, digital technologies are transforming the way we live, we work, we eat, we play. And we say that as if that's something that's happening to somebody else, somewhere else. Or it's happening in a place where it is nice to do. It is something that creates an experience that you don't associate with how businesses are run. I reflected upon how within TCS, what we are doing, and of course you've heard from Suri quite a lot about that. And the stories that we often share, for example, what we do to protect the one-horned rhino in the jungles of Assam in India, or to provide clean water through data analytics and predicting what water systems are being affected by changes in environment. Or we talk about providing farmers access to technology so that they can monitor their crops. And these are rural farmers who don't know technology, don't have access to it. So these are some of the stories that you often hear and we like to talk about when we think about technology. But what I want to impress upon all of you, and we may be preaching to the choir here, is that technology is mainstream. Technology is, yes, it's great to talk about all of these use cases and these examples, because it exemplifies what technology can do in that kind of a context. But it is also important for you to listen to these leaders talk about how technology is changing, how digital technologies are changing their own businesses, how they are transforming the way they think about their business, they interact with their enterprise internally, and therefore with the culture and with the processes and with the employees within the company. So that is where I want to kick off this panel and ask our panelists to think about what are the opportunities that are available to industries like leaders like FedEx, like Walmart, like British Petroleum, and Cigna, and an education-focused company like Discovery Education. How is digital technologies, the different digital technologies, and again, we talk it in a very broad brushstroke, right? Digital technologies. But you will hear today the nuance of how different kind of digital technologies are transforming different industries. And by the end of this panel, I hope you see the hyper-connected nature of it also. So I want to kick this off with Becky Schmidt from Walmart. And You said automation is yesterday's news. Can you tell us, give us a soundbite of what do you mean by that?
Okay, so Balaji and I had a call last week, and so I said some controversial things, I think. But we work with many partners at Walmart, and we obviously, when you think of a retailer, you don't automatically think of Walmart as a technology company. But you can't walk through any store and buy a product without some aspect of technology. From are we measuring if the freezer is cold enough, the availability of stock. A lot of people like to use self-checkout. We have another tool called Scan and Go. You scan it with your phone as you put it in your cart, you bypass the cash register. So there's a lot of things happening that people inside of Walmart are making happen for technology. But in speaking with one of our partners, we still have a long way to go, right? There's still a lot of paper pushing that happens in the world's largest employer, Walmart. And we sometimes get frustrated with that, and so we talk about we have to automate. And the partner told me, it's like 6 months ago, I would have said automation, but now I'm saying artificial intelligence. So there is a step where in the last 15 years, we've implemented mini bots, Excel spreadsheets that will do all the tabulation for you, other desktop tools to help you work faster. But now we can deploy artificial agents that'll be on your desktop, will be on the cash register, that can help make those decisions. And we can go from the paper pushing right to that. So I'm not sure how we're going to do that yet, but that is now what I'm really focused on, is not this two-step process, but the leap ahead.
Thank you for that. So I hope each of the panelists, when they speak, they give you a sense of what is the possibility. If you are not introducing some of these technologies in your organization, think of avenues to do that. And when I think of logistics and the largest company in the world in that space, that's FedEx. Nate, you said that information is critical for you. What do you mean by that, and how are you being transformed? How is FedEx leading this transformation?
Absolutely. Information is critical because I think it was Machiavelli who said, "He who has information has power." And our customers are expecting not only information, they want to know where their stuff is at every second, every day. The team we play on, we're 400,000 strong around the world globally. And if we think about just the freight that we move across the United States, we move 1.3 billion miles. That's 6 trips around the sun. I mean, so that when you think about not only the information, people are entrusting us with not only their product, they're entrusting us. Let's try that again. They're entrusting us with their products. They're entrusting us with a lot of things. And that information is so critical to be able to share with not only where their stuff is, how we're moving it, and we're taking that due diligence and care. So this is a critical space for us. Our digital fitness is a critical space. We're growing our digital fitness across 2 spaces, not only with how we're transacting moves, but also the equipment we use. Our vehicles. We want to make sure that the vehicles we put across the road and drive all those miles are not only safe, but they're connected. And so as we think about, I hear a lot about autonomous vehicles, and one thing that people miss is 100% of our vehicles by the end of the year, if we think about line haul, where we're moving across the roads, across states, will have the highest level of level 3 automation technology. That's collision mitigation, rollover assistance, lane assist. These are things that will jump in faster than any driver could mitigate in safety standards, faster than anybody can respond. And these are the types of things when we think about digital fitness that we don't talk about. We just jump to maybe automation, trucks driving by themselves. So we're excited to be on the forefront of both digital information with our customers, digital information within our vehicles to not only be safe, but be responsive to the needs of tomorrow.
That's so in line with the theme of this summit, which is short term for long term, right? So what you're doing today to do that incremental change so that you're prepared for transformational change. And believe you me not, but when I spoke to Morag said something which is very profound. She said, and she's from British Petroleum, a gas and energy company, and she said, how about we don't drill for oil anymore? What are you doing to transform BP? And if you don't drill for oil anymore, what do we do?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, that's a big question, right? So imagine if you could actually find a way where you can actually remote sense it, so you're just at the surface and you don't have to put anything down, and you can find where all the deposits are. Because I was just cottoning on to everybody was saying, you know, all companies are basically technology companies, or they're becoming more digital. You can kind of think of BP as already a technology company, but we're basically an engineering company, engineering and science, but we're not a data company, right? And that's really where we're moving to, is more data-driven decisions. So if you think about how we look for oil and gas right now, which you probably don't know, but you can probably imagine, we build a model of the Earth, we kind of guess at where stuff is. Whoops, don't be quoted on the guess bit. Okay, we make a model, but it's got an estimation, it's just a model, and then we go and drill for it. Imagine if there was a different way to find it where you didn't actually have to build a model, where you could actually have a whole different way of sensing for it. And imagine if you could actually get it out without actually doing a hole. So imagine if it came from the bottom up instead of top down. So these are the kind of things, I don't know how to do this, by the way. If I did, I'd be a millionaire and I probably wouldn't be here, right? These are the kind of questions that we're asking, is how can you fundamentally do things differently? And what are all the impossible questions out there that actually might now have an answer to them using digital? And it starts by doing things differently now. So it starts by taking what we currently do and thinking about how you can just do that differently. But then if you actually take the outcomes of our business and you say, actually, how could that just be produced completely differently? That's the kind of outside-in approach.
So you're seeing examples of how companies as large and successful as the ones represented in this panel and this room are starting to ask the right questions, but also coming out with a path towards those answers and those solutions. And what I loved about a statement that John made when I spoke to him is that he sort of echoed what the millennial generation is all about, which is instant gratification, right? Here and now. So he said that consumers want something that's immediate and now. So how is that changing Cigna?
How many of you have received an EOB? Explanation of benefits. Those miserable forms that keep coming. And the word explanation, there is no explanation, right? So if you think of Cigna's mission to help improve the health and sense of security of the people we serve, that's our mission. How are we going to improve the health and sense of security? It's all through data, so we're investing heavily in data. Our customers are now saying, hey, wait a minute, when I go to Amazon or when I go to any technology company, I get instant information. Why can't Cigna do the same? Why can't I go on an app and see where my claim is and why it hasn't been processed, or what's the hang-up, right? Or how much I owe in a bill. And so clearly, digital is becoming part of what we do. We're investing hugely in that capability. We're doing a tremendous amount of hiring in schools across the country for talent that has that mobile and web experience. And it's amazing. The innovation that these young people are bringing to Cigna is amazing. And so how do we improve the health and well-being? One of the areas that we're focusing on is relaxation. And so a group of 2 or 3 years out of school came up and developed a relaxation pod, which is it's a virtual reality pod. And you can pick the place you want to go to. You can go to the Bahamas, you can go to Bali, you can go wherever you want. And you can spend 5, 10, 15 minutes in the relaxation pod. And when you come out, you're chilled, right? You're chilled. So it's a way that we are trying to reduce stress in the workplace. That doesn't only work for us as a company, but also work for all our clients. That's one of the things that we are presenting to our clients. So the digital economy is here. The way that customers want to interact with every company, whether it's healthcare, whether it's gas, whatever it is now. It's instant, it's immediate, and we need to figure out how to get there.
It's when I reflect upon what you said. A couple of days ago, I was in Toronto for the finale of a Go IT program with the Toronto District School Board, and one of the teams that developed an app on health and stress, they had a similar concept to what you said. What they developed is a virtual plant. So their idea is that as an individual, you should be able to go and pick a plant of your choice in the virtual space. And depending on how well you manage your health, if you do, if you run 5 minutes, if you do breathing exercises, if you do a series of steps throughout the day, the plant starts growing. And if you don't, the plant starts shrinking. And what one of the students said was so profound and affected me is he said that in the adult world, that is fake. For us, this is real. So when you have to cater to millions of students like that, Lori, as part of your work at Discovery Education, how is that changing the way you look at education, and how do you prepare them for the opportunities that exist in companies like Walmart, FedEx, BP, and Cigna?
Well, I loved the comment that you made about one day we'll be drilling for oil without drilling holes, but who are the people who are going to figure that out? I'll tell you who's going to figure that out. It's a middle school student today who is sitting in their classroom and who's benefiting from digital technology and the marriage of media and technology to help to learn in an entirely different way. We work with school districts across the country, and it's, we believe, a moral imperative that we have to prepare today's students to be STEM literate, to compete for the jobs in today's and tomorrow's digital economy. We talk a lot about the fact that 65% of today's middle school students will have a job when they grow up that doesn't even exist today. And so if we're not thinking about that now and investing in that now, then we're going to have a problem. So what you're seeing, I think I look at industries that are being disrupted and are looking at new ways to achieve their goals. Two big areas are education and healthcare, and you're seeing that a lot. And when we first started working at Discovery Education, we work in about 50% of all US schools, about 50% of the primary schools in the UK, in 200 country territories around the world, serving about 50 million students, 4.5 million educators. And a couple years ago, we spent a lot of time talking to them about it's so important to go digital. We have to prepare today's students for tomorrow. Now we're not having those conversations. Districts across the country are saying to us, we know we have to go digital. How do we get there? And you have some districts that are 100% digital. It's one-to-one. Some of you may have kids who are in school districts where they all have their own devices. Other districts, not so much. It might be a situation where it's one-to-many. But regardless of where that is, what you're finding in school districts, it's not so much the technology they have in the classroom, but it's two key things. It's the content that they have, the experiences that they have. You know, I read an article yesterday that the former executive chairman of Cisco commented the single greatest thing that we can do to impact the digital economy and the workforce of tomorrow is stop teaching today's students like we did in the 1950s. And to really empower them with the digital tools and content and technology that helps them explore their world, that gives them individualized learning experiences, and that really meets them where they are. And we talk a lot about, we've all heard the digital natives and digital immigrants. 70% of educators who are teaching today's children are digital immigrants. They did not grow up with this technology. We have to invest in them and help them learn and build the skills needed to support today's digital natives. And when we see the work that's happening in districts across the country, and when you mention what you saw in Toronto, it's incredibly inspiring because today's middle school students are using technology to help ask big questions and to help solve big problems. And we're very bullish and excited and have great hope and belief in what they're going to do to help contribute to the future tomorrow.
Thank you, Lori. And I think you're setting us up for a perfect segue into the next topic. So this panel has it hard because I asked them three really critical questions that many of us have been discussing in the last year or so after the previous summit. The first one was, how are organizations developing digital capabilities in their current workforce? Which means that, are you walking the talk? If you are here, you already are, but how are you doing it? You know, what's most interesting and important for us to understand is, what is your starting point? What's your entry ramp look like? And where does it lead? Is it a unidimensional one? Are you using the same size fits all approach, or do you have customized approach to how you're developing your talent, digital capabilities in your current talent? And it's not just about the tech part of your workforce, those who are in jobs that anyway would require those skills. What you heard, the common thread here is no matter which role you play in an organization, you have to have some level of understanding of digital technologies to be able to do your job well, because you need to first understand your consumer better, and your consumer is a digital native today in some way or shape or form. So before I go into the question about how you're working with communities to do this externally, I want to turn the focus to your own organizations and maybe shine a light a little bit on what you're doing. I want to start with you, Morag, because everybody made provocative and profound statements when I spoke to them. But Morag said something I think you would love. She said that we didn't hire dumb people, so we better make it work. And what do you mean by that? How do you approach this whole concept of preparing your existing workforce for the opportunities that you're seeing? How do you make them get to that point where you can do the drilling without actually drilling?
I seem to be getting quoted quite a lot, but what should I say? So the first thing I want to say, by the way, is don't wait till 2020. The job I have today didn't exist a year ago. So it might look on paper like a fairly normal job, but what I do, I'm the Vice President of Digital Innovation. My job is to do things in digital that nobody else is doing. If somebody else is already doing it, I'm not interested, right? Because there's plenty of people that are looking at it. I do the stuff that nobody else is doing out there. So my job is to be out there in front. But in terms of preparing the organization, I kind of think about digital capability in three parts. Because when you talk digital inside our company or across different communities, you get a different answer as to what is digital. It means different things to different people. And so I think about it in three parts. The first is leadership, okay? So if you think about it, at the top of our company, these are the people that actually need to sponsor digital transformation. Because if they don't embrace it, because they don't know it, they don't understand it. Mostly when digital turns up to the majority of executives today, it turns up as kind of IT projects. And let's face it, most IT projects, because I've been there, lived it, done it, okay? I can say this. Most IT projects are always over budget, and they never deliver what they were supposed to, and they always go over time, right? So most executives are kind of predisposed to, no, not doing that. You know, the cloud transformation comes on, IT project not doing it. So you have to get them in a different place, because actually to enable this digital world, you actually need them to sponsor it. So there's a certain amount of digital education that's required of our current executives so that they can actually sponsor digital transformation. And then you've got another leadership capability, which is your emerging talent, which again at the moment has still majoritively had kind of traditional background, but they need to understand how are they going to sustain digital transformation, because they are going to be the future leaders. They're the people that are actually going to sustain this organization. Second kind of capability in digital capability I think about is workforce productivity, which is the skill sets that everybody kind of needs. So yeah, there are some digital natives in the organization, but there's a lot of people that are really smart people, right? So we didn't hire dumb people. There's a lot of really smart people in our organization that just need some help to be able to embrace tools so that they can get up to a certain level of productivity. The third kind, which is really where I think you were targeting on, is the specific skill sets, the new digital skills that are coming out that are really kind of around data science, around artificial intelligence, RPA, blockchain, quantum. I could keep going. This is my day job. But so what of that do we actually need in companies like ourselves, and where do we go and get it? And the premise has been majoritively, oh no, data science, big thing. How many of you know about data science? You all heard about data science? It's a big thing. There's a big shortage, right? So everybody's going to need to hire all of them. And you're like, well, no, actually, there's a lot of people that actually know how to do Bayesian correlations and all this basic linear regression. It's that stuff, but with on steroids, if you like. So you have a lot of the basic capability already in your organizations. What they need is reskilling. These people, they understand it. They just don't know how to use some of the new tools on it. So in terms of thinking about how do we get those new skills, it's not just I need to grow new talent and go and hire it all. There's some of that, but there's a lot of that talent that actually is nascent inside your own organization, which needs retrained, reskilled, needs taught how to use the new tools. In lots of cases, just needs the lid taken off, actually. There's a lot of people just trapped in jobs of the here and now and today, that if you just open it a little bit, you see that they can go and do amazing things in this digital world. So it's not all about millennials. It's not all about digital natives. It's about both. The other thing that has to accompany this, and I'll be very quick on this, is so not only do you need the skill set, but you actually need a different culture. Because this stuff is super fast, changing really crazily fast, and you must be able to fail or learn, right? So lots of this stuff is trial it, redo, trial it, redo, but trial and learn and go back. So this fast fail culture, you need it. That in companies like mine, like BP, that's not seen as culturally acceptable. So not only do you need these digital talents, and not only can they be done by a lot of people that you currently have, so it's not all new people, but you also need a culture change underneath it as well to be able to support it.
Thank you. So skill set, mindset, leadership, culture, I think we've covered most of it then, right? So if you are looking for solutions, here they are. What I loved about each of your organizations is that there are so much in common in terms of what you're doing, but you have unique aspects of how you're customizing it for your own organization. So Becky, you spoke about the +1 skill and how a Walmart employee can be a digital linguist. Can you share your thoughts on
Sure.
how you're getting your workforce proficient in these technologies?
Sure. One of the things that, as I was listening to Morik talk, culture is definitely a barrier for anyone. I think people can learn amazing things, and I'll just talk about myself for 1 second. I was a liberal arts major, English and comparative literature, so really not very useful, but I wanted to study abroad, so that was why I selected that major. But I was hired by Anderson Consulting, which is now called Accenture, and I was taught to program in C and COBOL. And so for the first 3 years of my career, I was out at clients as a developer and then a functional designer. I would have never thought in a million years I would be a technologist, but I always tell people, I'm like, you can learn this. I mean, there's so many different aspects of technology, but you have to be open and willing to learn. This morning when I was reading my news feed, there was a quote from Satya Nadella, and he was talking to Microsoft, and he said, it's not about being a know-it-all, it's about being a learn-it-all. And so when I think about that, I also reflect on curiosity and how if we can just get out of ourselves for 5 minutes of the day and think about what's happening around the world, it makes you wonder, well, could I do that? Would I be interested in that? And at Walmart, we have the opportunity to have amazing partnerships with lots of educators, vendors, even just sort of programs like Udacity where people can go out and partner and learn, or we can bring that training in. But our people have to want to show up and learn it. And I try to remind them that, listen, you're digital in your personal life, so you need to be digital in the work environment. How many of you go to Starbucks or order ahead with your app and pick up your coffee? Who wants to wait in line anymore, right? Or my favorite one is Domino's Pizza, because I can order from work and I can see it progressing online so that I can text my 15-year-old to get him off his video games to go answer the door when the pizza's coming, right? Because I know it's on the way. It's that transparency. But we come to work sometimes and we forget that we live this way outside of the office. And we go back to, well, this has been my job. This is my safe and secure spot. So like Morik said, we have to give people the opportunity to experiment. So if your organization can participate in an hour of code, that's a great way to let people dabble. If you can let them have some time during the week to go invest in themselves, either through a partnership with a local university or educator, or bring them in for workshops. We have a great program just called Coffee Spills, and it's really about Java. And it's at lunchtime, people come, they talk about their tech issues. It's really not just about Java anymore, but that's how it started. And it's really popular. We also have a program called the Digital Danny, and this is a graphic novel we've created. There's 6 modules to reach our population about what it means to be digital. And even things like having a vocabulary list, because we throw words around like, oh, that's so digital, or are you agile, or are you this? And now it like means so many things. Now I'm an HR professional and we're saying, are we agile? Well, it might be different than what it means in technology. So as an organization, we're actually working through like, okay, what are all the things coming up and what does it mean for us? A big focus right now is on product management, not project, but product. So what is the experience the recipient has? Whether that recipient is your employee or our associate or it's an actual customer. And how do you think about designing for that rather than just checking a box? So, I mean, I could go on because it's really exciting, but those are some of the top ones.
That's great, and especially when you look at functions like HR, corporate functions, which are not traditionally considered as adding value to business, right? It's different now, right? Because we're leading the change. I'm an HR professional too, you can tell. The argument I would make is that agile, as much as it is a technology tool, it's also a mindset. Right? So using that as a mindset in your example of how you're transforming the way your employees are able to see themselves, use those tools and those methodologies to incrementally change, to be open to failure and risk, which you also alluded to the same thing, that having that tolerance for failure is so important. You spoke about tracking Domino's pizzas, which is nice to do, but Nate, that's bread and butter for you. Tracking where your fleet is, are things being delivered on time? So you said everybody is a problem solver. So how do you go from that to looking at your workforce, part of which is on the road and part of which is in-house? So such a dispersed workforce. How do you approach skills development? How do you approach making them ready for the changes that are occurring in the enterprise space and in the culture of FedEx?
Yeah, a great question. We've been in this space since 1973. I would say our enterprise has been on the cutting edge of just this transformation, which is nice. My team runs the engineering ops planning. I have now ops research. I have end-to-end real estate. We're trying to bring the cutting-edge innovation into our space. So we're really in the transformation business. But I mentioned at the top that we have about 400,000 in our overall organization, but we're transforming each industry one opco at a time. And in the LTL space, where I primarily run the innovation and transformation, this space has been really behind the digital fitness age. And I'll say one thing, my mother started with Express in about 1976. And when she started with, it was Federal Express in those days. I was on my way to kindergarten and, losing my mom for the first time, and she was going back to work, and I was the youngest of four. And I was sad because I was losing my mom. But she's like, little Nate, I'm going to work, and this is going to be awesome. And she went to work, and she worked at the organization for 35 years. And part of that is that transformation with watching her started with an organization that just moved packages to being really innovative in digital control, digital visibility, digital execution, and now really leading that space. I got a chance to learn that, and I went off into the business. I think I got my first engineering intern from one of her stops. She came home and says, hey, I stopped at ExxonMobil, and they're looking for interns, and I said, I know just the person. So it was awesome. So I learned at a very young age what transformation can do. So it was outstanding when I worked in a different industry. Automotive, went over to logistics at Coca-Cola, and FedEx called, said, hey, we want to do some additional digital transformation in a space that you know very well. And now we're embarking on this. One of the things I'll say with the associates, when we're out in our facilities, we have about 253 LTL facilities in North America. And when we initially ask folks really simple questions like, how many of you guys have a smartphone? I mean, we're 99% smartphones. So our folks are really engaged with technology, even though in the space of the LTL business, we were behind in the digital curve. And so as we look at really creating transformation, we meet our associates where they are. Like, what are your experiences today? Number one, we had to assess where we are, and we had to be honest. with our digital fitness in the business is a lot different than our digital fitness personally. So once we assessed that, we were able to create a transformation plan with our associates. And that transformation plan included not only QDM, where we did quality-driven management training tools, but we rolled out a plan to start disrupting the business by getting rid of all of our paper. No one used paper anymore. We use paper in the restrooms, that's it. So we went to using automated display boards. We went to really automated units on our forklifts. We started meeting them where they've been for years. In 2007, I think, if you think about it like this, in 2007, they came out with the iPhone, and I think people thought, man, this is a transformation. One thing I'll tell you, if you would have dropped the iPhone without having cross-functional transformation like iPods, you had to meet people where they are. You have to have that gateway capability, and that's what we're doing in our business where folks weren't traditionally involved in this digital transformation. Meeting them where they are, creating gateway capability, rolling out this plan where folks can really be part of this transformation. And we have a huge plan. At the end of the day, I'm rolling out a plan that we hope to be really at its finite stage around 2020. So the capability and the people we're bringing on is for 2020 and 2025. And some things we know and some things we don't know. So we're really preparing to build that capability for the things we don't know today.
That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And it directly segues to, Lori, what you said when we spoke, that you had to keep the end user in mind when you develop your organization for the opportunities that exist today. So can you speak a little bit about how Discovery's own internal organization and culture is changing, and how are you developing the skill sets to do what you want to do with the 50 million odd students across the world?
Absolutely, and I think what's so exciting, and as you're hearing the panelists talk today, the innovation, the transformation, and the lack of fear of blowing up existing models to find new ways to do things is so exciting and so inspiring. And again, you're seeing it in corporations and in classrooms across the country. I think for us, there's really 4 observations or guideposts or things that we have seen that really have helped us as we're moving down this path. And we see this mirrored a lot in districts as well. I think the first is really what you talked about in terms of customer experience, and really being able to look at what's your customer experience, and whether you define your customer as a student sitting in a classroom, whether you define your customer as a teacher who's coming to work every day, or you're defining your customer as a person who's walking into Walmart, what is their experience and what can we do to make it better? The second is innovative collaboration. How can we start to look at moving past the linear supply chain model that has been ingrained in business? How can we collaborate with people that previously you might have considered to be competitors, but you can come together and create better solutions? A quick example of that with Discovery Education, we do have this really compelling streaming service used by 50 million students across the country. We've had a significant number of content producers come to us and say, why are we going to invest in building the same infrastructure and building the same tools? Why don't we collaborate and we could ride your platform? And there's more innovative things we can do together, and we're going to deliver an even more compelling solution to our end user. I think the third thing is organizational leadership. I loved a quote one time I heard. They said, when you look at a company now, it's not madmen that rule the world, it's mathmen. How do we use data to inform everything that we're doing, and let that be the guiding principles about how we make decisions and how we run our business? And I think finally it's being open to reinvention and product enhancements. Suri was talking about the toothpaste app, which I'm completely getting from my 12-year-old son, who doesn't think brushing teeth is something he needs to worry about ever. But being able to look at, is there a better way to do what we're doing? A number of years ago, we realized the textbook industry, in the last 30 years, prices of textbooks have gone up 800%. I live here in Montgomery County, and my students were using textbooks that were printed 10 years ago, and that information was out of date, and it wasn't serving their needs. And so we reinvented, this existing infrastructure and created digital textbooks that are 100% scoped and sequenced. They're 100% platform neutral. They meet kids where they are. They allow for individualized learning. So you have over 3 million students learning math and science and social studies without a book. And it's changing how innovation is happening both in the classroom and we believe what will happen at a company down the road. So for us, it's really following those guiding principles. And I love what you said about, and I think I probably used the phrase being an info seeker, but being open and curious and wanting to learn and not being afraid to ask the question why and what if.
Thank you. This is terrific. I'm sure the tweets, the Twitterverse is going crazy over all the amazing insights that are coming in. I want to pivot to John, and before we get into the next topic, which is what are you doing with communities? Maybe you can address both these questions together. First of all, your early career development program, you said, grew 3 times over the past 5 years. So you're doing a lot to prepare entry-level talent to the new possibilities, the new culture, the new expectations within Cigna. But you're also doing a very innovative thing in partnering with universities. Can you talk a little bit about both? And this is going to help us move from what companies are doing internally to prepare their own workforce to what are they doing? What are the innovative things they're doing to prepare the workforce of tomorrow?
So if you think about Cigna, right, and you think about technology jobs, how many tech students are going to choose Cigna as their employer of choice? They want to go to Google, they want to go to Amazon, they want to go to other places, right? So Cigna is not the first place that people want to come from a technology perspective. And so some of the things we've done is we've completely changed our brand on campus. And what we've done is we have 3 innovation and digital labs on campus. And so we get them early, right? And we offer them internships as they're going through school. So they start working for us, they learn our culture, which is amazing. And then, as they're progressing through their college, we're getting deeper and deeper into the hook. The hook's getting deeper and deeper, right? So when they graduate, we have about a 70% conversion from interns into full-time. And it's a really good investment. If you think about it, it's expensive to have those labs on campus, but it works really well. Yes, we have quadrupled the size of our early career program. And that's the way we're infusing digital talent into our company. We also host codathons. We sponsor a codathon at Yale University. And it was open to the public, but it was also open to our employees. And so that was a great event last year. I'm going to transition to the second question on communities. We get really involved with communities. That's part of the Cigna DNA. And one of the things we're doing in the Hartford area, as an example, last year we went into a underserved, underprivileged school, and we donated 1,000 computers to the school. And so, as you know, if students at an early age can become comfortable with technology, it's an easier ask as they move up into college. We also work with NGOs around the world. We have different programs that we offer our employees, and they try to move the technology needle across the NGOs in different parts of the world that Cigna does business in. An example of that, we were in a remote village of Bali. It sounds really exciting, but it was really not. It was very rural. They only built a dirt road about 8 years ago to access this village, so that's how rural it was, how away from the society it was. And we helped build 5 schools and provided computers for those schools, which requires electricity, by the way. So you have to really build a whole infrastructure for that village. We help add mobile technology so they have access to stuff outside of that little valley in the mountains of Indonesia. So those are examples of things that we're doing across the world.
Terrific. And so I really want to hear the rest of the panel's thoughts on this topic of what are you doing to prepare people in your local community, not just young people, mind you. There are retirees who, because the average lifespan has gone up, are looking for work. There are people who are coming back from active duty veterans and others who are seeking opportunities. There is existing workforce that is being disrupted out of the jobs that they have today because of the advent of technology. So there is, as Becky said, it is, we owe it. It is an obligation for us to think of and take care of all of these individuals. So I want each of you to reflect upon what you're doing. I think there are great examples that each of you have to share on what you're doing specific to higher education or K through 12, but in general. So let me put this to you, Becky. You said we have an obligation to repurpose people. Can you talk a little bit about what we can do as industry to approach things in a way that is with the lens of equity and access? Diversity is nice because it's self-serving, but we need to be inclusive. So how do we design that into the partnerships and into the programs that we have?
Right. Well, obviously, we're a very large employer, and so we are constantly looking at ways that we can give our people new opportunities. So for our associates who work in the stores, we actually have over 100 academies now across the U.S. where we provide ongoing training. So you may start as a cashier or a floor associate, and there are very specific training modules that you can go through to not only increase your pay, but elevate your opportunity to become a department manager or someday an assistant manager, co-manager. And people here might be thinking, oh, but they're still in the store, right? Well, the store actually uses a lot of technology, as I was saying, and as long as we can continue to evolve how we're using technology in the store, we can develop our associates to become more experts in the areas that they work in. I mean, how many times have you gone in a store and there's nobody to help you, right? You can't find it. Well, we want to put our people back on the floor so that if you are trying to buy a bottle of wine, there's people who actually can help you with that. And by the way, there's a very good $7 bottle of wine at Walmart. It was in the news, I'm not joking. But additionally, if you're gonna buy flowers, like we should have people who have that background, right? Who have some horticulture skills, or who've gone through a master gardener program if they're working in our lawn care center. So there's things like that. Now, in terms of just technology, which is where my focus is more with USC Commerce, we partner with a lot of external organizations, not only STEMCONNECTOR, the Anita Borg Institute. One that I think is particularly interesting is Tech 2040, and that's partnering with African American and Latino women engineers to broaden their experience in technology and e-commerce. And then internally, we are starting a new group called She Rocks Tech. And this is really for our women. Yes, I knew you'd like that, Edie. And it's really for our women to help them close the gap in different areas of technology. What we found is that we had a lot of our program managers or business analysts that were actually female, and then the developers, the data scientists were male in our organization. So overall, numbers look great, but actually who's doing the technical work was not necessarily our women. So now we have an opportunity to help them bridge that gap, give them exposure, put them through boot camps, which I also am a huge fan of, and also help them with their networking skills, overall, digital savvy, and just ways that they can continue to invest outside of work. So I'll pause there.
No, it's terrific. So there are two more models that I want you to hear, and then I'll end with Laurie. So first I'm going to go to Nate. You spoke about the focus on intelligent learning and machine learning. And can you talk a little bit about your partnership with MIT, Georgia Tech? Specifically, take a quick minute, talk through that, give us a rundown on how you're doing that, and why is it important for FedEx to have those sort of partnerships?
Yeah, it's critical from our partnership, and we're doing it on a couple of different levels. Not only at MIT, Georgia Tech, where we're going out and looking at a couple of different programs where machine learning is critical, but data analytics. I currently have now 2 data scientist teams and data analytic teams to really look at all of the data we've been collecting over the past 10 years, and we're collecting terabytes of data every day. We've been on the front line of that, but we call it analysis paralysis because we have so much data, and making it usable and making it actionable has been a critical path for us. Our customers, of course, are asking for better data, better access, better visibility. So what we're trying to do is partner up with those institutions that not only are on the front edge of those resources, but are now starting these programs. I will say, It's still in its infancy stage. I was doing a recruitment seminar, a recruitment supporting session at MIT probably about a month, 2 months ago. It was 35 organizations there, some great organizations. But there's 17 students in the first class, right? So we have way more organizations. It was 400 supported students overall supporting MBA students. A lot of folks came over from Harvard. But when we think about rolling up our sleeves and getting into this analytical space, it's still a start. And so we have to partner up in a couple different levels. We're looking at multiple universities, University of Arkansas, Georgia Tech, MIT. We're expanding to multiple universities across states because we're going to meet the students and capabilities where they are. And then the second thing I wanted to say is then we're partnering up at a lower level. We have to go down to the junior high school level and the high school level. So we're adopting schools specifically like Eastside High in Memphis, where we're working with the local STEM programs. I mean, we're just going and we're judging can. They did a construction event where 8th graders and 7th graders built. It was a kind of a charity thing where they donated canned goods, built them in structures, and then we judged them on the engineering structure, stability, look and feel, as well as the nutritional value of the cans they chose to use. Awesome types of things where you roll up your sleeves and go into the communities and they see you. Because I think it was somebody who said, I tend to value what I see, and when they see our teams out there rolling up our sleeves and really supporting it, they get a value for the STEM. So we have to start early. Of course, I'm all for partnerships at universities going right to the source, but as you can see, it was 35 companies at MIT looking at the 17 data analytics students. I talked to every last one. Google's table was very crowded. Everybody was in circles. But I'll tell you this, the way we really set ourselves apart is being where they are, meeting them where they are, start a lot earlier, and building those partnerships, going out into the community. And that's been our approach. And we think it's going to work well for us between now and our 2020 goal.
Thank you. And Morag, this is exactly what you're doing with your Schools Link program. Can you talk a little bit about how the multi-prong approach is working for you and the kind of engagement that Nate talks about? And Pavel talked about it yesterday, that give me opportunities that challenge me. How are you doing that?
And so in the UK for the longest time, ever since I joined BP actually, a long time ago, we've had this program called a Schools Link program, which Kathleen just told me actually we're going to start doing it in the US as well. Yay. And basically what it is volunteers across the organization side BP volunteer to go and be the link, the connector to a local school, and they get involved in all kinds of things. It could be something to do with the profession that they are. It could be bringing BP or bringing oil and gas experience, or bringing speakers in, or working through curriculum. It could be anything, but there's an ongoing relationship with that school that can have lots and lots of different facets. But there's various other things that we do that's part of our kind of multi-pronged approach. And I mean, we leverage things like junior achievement, and across the US, we already do have some relationships with schools. And I, in particular, am involved with a underprivileged middle school, which is not far from our Houston office. And we do a series of events throughout the year, ranging from things like robotics camps, or busting the myths of what it's like to work in a big company like ours. And frequently, one of the things that we find is that the students that you're talking to, they often don't have role models to follow, right? So they look into companies like ours and they go, but there's nobody like me, or I don't have the education that she has, so I couldn't possibly get there. And so when you start sharing your story about how I actually play the violin, that's actually my first degree, okay? Computing was my second one. And they go, wow, how does that related? And then you start going through, actually I joined BB to do X, but now I'm doing all these other things, and I've lived in 9 different countries, I speak like 6 languages, and they're like, oh, and that all came from having, yes, a technical education. And they go, oh wow, I didn't realize that. I just thought it was about becoming a nerd. I'm like, no, you can do that other ways, but it's really actually about opening their eyes. And so I think things like having role models is really important, which brings me on to something else that we've done in the UK. We've created this Modern Muse online app, which basically gives schools and children in schools access to online role models, so that kids that wouldn't normally have access to people coming to visit from different companies, they can go online and they can see somebody more like them that's already in a company. They can see how they got there. They can have a relationship. They can have an online mentoring relationship. So that's just a few of the things that we've been doing.
That's terrific. Such great examples. And I want Lori to have the last word, but I want to set it up by saying that one of the things in the last few years, as I talk to leaders, as I talk to companies across all sectors, that we've realized, and in the work in the Innovation Task Force, and the other councils with the Higher Education Council and the Food and Ag, one thing that's dawned on me is that since innovation often occurs at the intersection of disciplines, it is important that when we think of preparing STEM fluent, STEM skills, STEM 2.0 skills, talent for the future, we think of it in that same context, not as silos of math and science and arts and humanities, but in a transdisciplinary way. Lori, so how will Ignite My Future in School help achieve that? What do you see as the pathway for that? And how do we go about replicating models like that with organizations and other partners of GSTS?
Well, this is one of my favorite topics, so I'm happy to quickly speak on that. If you remember no other word today, write down the word transdisciplinary. That is critical to what's happening in education today, and it's critical for how every company in this room can get their message out, can position themselves as leaders, and can help support building the workforce of tomorrow. Transdisciplinary, and I'll use the example of the innovative work that TCS is doing through Ignite My Future, it's taking a step beyond, I'm going to teach computer science, or I'm going to teach kids how to code, which is critically important. And we all know the stats of the number of states who've mandated computer science education, the shockingly large number that have not. And computer science is a class. At my children's high school, it's a class, and some kids sign up for it. It might be perceived as the nerdy class, and a lot of kids don't. What we found in talking to educators, and again, we talked earlier about talking to the customer experience, is that the critical skills needed to succeed in tomorrow's digital economy and to be able to code or to be able to creatively problem solve requires computational thinking. It requires the collaborative computational thinking that powers coding. So the initiative, Ignite My Future, is going to be working with educators to help them build computational thinking skills in a transdisciplinary fashion. How can you use computational thinking in English? Not just math, but how in English, in history, in your civics lessons. Again, it's not just math and science. And what we have found is educators are so excited because they see now that they're playing a role, and it's not just the computer science teacher. And what you're finding is the receptivity to a company like TCS, who's been such a leader and innovator in making a difference in education in our country and around the world, frankly, is the perception of TCS as an innovator who understands it's not just about teaching a specific skill, but it's building critical problem-solving skills. And that's what's going to make all the difference for our children's future.
Thank you, Lori. I think that's a great place to end. I think we started with talking about how diverse industries, how the different industries that are represented here on the panel, on the room, are being disrupted by digital technologies. We then went into specific examples of what companies are doing to develop their own workforce, mindset, culture, and leadership. And then we looked at how companies are partnering with institutions, whether it is in the formal education sector or the informal sector, to help promote that culture of learning and sharing and adapting and growing. And I want to stress that final point that I truly believe, we all truly believe, that computational thinking and knowledge of problem-solving skills is going to be required for any career across any sector. So I really want to thank the panelists. This has been really amazing, really tremendous. getting to know each other. I mean, we work together professionally in many ways, but to realize the depth of your passion, your commitment to this cause, and also what you're doing within your organizations to walk the talk. So it's been such a pleasure. I hope you had a lot of things to take away. I know we don't have time for questions. Do we have time for questions? We are at time. But find them. Find them. I know many of them have flights to catch. Don't leave them. Catch hold of them because they are at the cutting edge, at the leading edge of what needs to be done to transform ourselves as individuals, as companies, as society, to make use of the opportunities to create prosperity for all. Thank you so much.